Good afternoon, and welcome to the Miami Business Leaders Podcast, where we dive into the core of what matters most to business owners. Thank you for tuning in today. Our mission is to empower, enlighten, and inspire entrepreneurs and business leaders just like you. And we're going to be doing that by sharing insights, strategies, and real life stories from the heart of Miami's bustling business community. Whether you're just starting out or scaling to new heights of your business journey, we're here to guide you through every step. So let's dive in and explore the dynamic world of business together. And we're going to be doing that by having our guest today, and Josh Blum from Evolve and Thrive. And we're going to be talking about strategies for positioning your business for maximizing value and crafting the lifestyle that you desire. Thank you so much, Josh, for coming on today.
Andre, happy to be here. Thank you so much for having me. This is awesome.
Yeah, I know it took a few times. I asked Josh, I remember to reschedule, and then he rescheduled on my birthday, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this guy's gonna think I'm a flake. Keep on rescheduling. So thank you so much for being flexible in your schedule as well.
I think I still owe you a birthday gift.
Yes, it's in the U.S. mail, so I'm still waiting. No problem. So, Josh, before we get started, I actually look forward to this conversation because as a business owner, I've had a lot of different podcasters, and sometimes they don't relate directly to me. But being that I am a business owner and I am, on the streets and I'm still getting my hands dirty, still trying to run the business, I think it's going to be a really interesting conversation because you're probably going to be answering a lot of questions that I have, and also me staring in the face of some of the problems that I have. So this is going to be a lot of fun. So for those that don't know you, tell us a little about yourself.
Yeah, thank you, Andre. And yeah, hopefully there's some value you take out of this, along with any of our listeners. We'll certainly get a sense of whether or not we know what we're talking about. And we've really identified the challenges that you deal with as a business owner pretty quickly. If you start looking off blankly out there, I know we're off base. But I'm pretty confident we're on target with what we do. A little about myself. I am South Florida based now, 6 years. I spent a career working for a Fortune 50 company in external sales, responsible for over $500 million in sales or more during my tenure there. And I worked very closely with professionals, whether it be financial services professionals, accountants, attorneys, so on and so forth, as a subject matter expert and really working within consultative sales.
Awesome. And what state was that? I know you have a different area code.
Yeah, so I'm originally from Connecticut, and I work for Prudential. Actually, the umbrella company has a number of other companies underneath it. The company I work for specifically represented over 20% of the gross revenue of the umbrella corporation. So Fortune 50 company. That job and that career took me from Connecticut to Texas to California over an 11-year stretch.
Wow. Nice. All right. So thanks so much for the introduction. So let's talk about a lot of different things. We're going to be talking about bottlenecks that businesses face, cash flow struggles, and how these issues can hinder growth and efficiency. So let's talk about the bottlenecks. And, just to give you an idea, Josh, our typical listener in this group here are anywhere from, we have some startups, but we have typically anywhere from 10 employees to about 100 employees. I know one listener who he's about 100, and one of my customers. So thank you for listening. So just to give you an idea of that in the audience, but what are some of the most common bottlenecks that we see in business today, and how does that impact a business?
That's such an interesting question because it can really depend on the size and the scale and complexity of a business. And yet, more often than not, Andre, I could probably point to the personnel and employees and labor as what time and time again leads to bottlenecks in a business. On a smaller scale business, oftentimes it's the owner themselves. It's me, it's you that we're the bottleneck. Because we all tend to have some control issues as business owners. It's very natural. We're building something from the ground up oftentimes, and we like to keep control of it. We wear a whole lot of hats. I had a post on this on LinkedIn just recently. If anybody's happened to look at my activity, you can probably my most recent post is about wearing so many hats as a business owner. And so bottlenecks a lot of times start with us. But even as we gain in complexity and maturity as a business and we move up and we have, 20, 50, 100 employees, I can't tell you how many times it still comes down to the people. And if it's not the owner that's the bottleneck, it's the key personnel. And Andre, the number one identification we see there where it causes issues is when you have an established business that's been around for a while and we've grown together. And I've had personnel and employees that have grown with me from this, and now I'm this, which is awesome. It's fantastic. The problem is a lot of times those people that grow with you, they grow into positions that really might not be appropriate for them. So you could have key personnel, you could have key positions, but is it the right person in the right position? Do they really have the education, the background, the skill set to get the job done that they need to get done? And oftentimes the answer is no, unfortunately, and that's where bottlenecks occur more frequently than not.
Well, Josh, I told you this was going to be a therapy session, so let me tell you about my problems. Yeah, I feel that all the time because, and for about 3 years, I couldn't pass the $1 million mark, and it's like, oh my gosh, like what is it? And I recall, like, there was a saying that sometimes the people you start with is not the people that you finish with. That doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to fire, everybody that was with you from the beginning, but sometimes you do have to look at yourself in the mirror and say, am I the right person to bring the business to this next level? Or do I need to bring some help or whatever the case is? So in my case, I realized that, like you said, that bottleneck, when everything flows through you and, you can only work 10, 12 hours a day, which is not even that healthy. But I guess when you're 30 years old, it's okay, and one kid. But nevertheless, I found that out, Josh, that I did need to get some people. And I remember that's when I had the COO position. And basically, I took an entire department, and we're only 10 employees. So it's not like it's, a huge thing. But I needed to take I should say, entire problems and tasks. And I needed to now move that to someone else so that I can then grow on the visionary. And unfortunately, as I'm sure you see, a lot of business owners, they go to 20, 30 years in their business, and then they're just always stagnant. And it's just like what is it, the hamster wheel.
Very, very much so. Jim Collins reference, the flywheel, the hamster wheel, like, it constantly, you're never picking up the speed that you need to pick up. And honestly, Andre, some people just will never be good CEOs. You could be technically phenomenal at your craft. Doesn't mean you're always going to be a good CEO. And sometimes that's a hard look in the mirror for people.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're willing to accept it and accept where your strengths are, then you can manage to it, and you can bring on somebody to take on that COO role or the CEO role or whatever it happens to be, so that you can do what you are most gifted at and where you can get the most productivity out of your energy.
Yeah, I've heard it before where they says, there's a big difference between a founder and a CEO.
Yeah, well, a lot of times, if private equity gets involved, that founder role is going to be just that, where it's, hey, we'll bring on a CEO. If the performance isn't there, we're not hitting the metrics that we decided, that's an earn out or something along those lines. Yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and that's kind of like how I'm trying to build my business now, where, I want it to be where, like you said, that private equity, firm comes in and they can look at the books and say, okay, hey, Andre, if you got hit by a bus tomorrow, can the business survive? Can the business, like, is everything up here? Do you have SOPs and things like that? So I think one of the things our listeners should always be thinking about as you try to scale your business is, you should be able to take that 2-week vacation without having chaos when you come back, and without having 200 emails that you have to answer because only the boss knew.
It's actually questions we have in our intake. What's the longest vacation you've taken? And did you actually vacation, or did you work on that vacation? Right.
Yes. I mean, does a 3-day cruise with Wi-Fi count? I don't know. Yeah. So
don't ask me. I'm guilty too. So, both
Okay.
of us on that one.
Yes, yes. So, we kind of touched on it, but let's go a little deeper. And by the way, for all our listeners, I see we have a handful here on YouTube and then also on LinkedIn. This is the time to ask questions. We are live. It is Wednesday at 2:11, and we put out time for Josh to answer any questions. So if you have any questions on what we're talking about or any comments, put your comments below, and we'll answer them live. So let's now talk a little deeper, Josh, about the struggles business owners commonly face.
Yeah, there's universals, and there's a lot of challenges that an owner faces. You know it. And anybody listening that's a business owner knows that it's not just one hand. There's a lot, but there's some universals that we deal with, and probably the most common that I run across is we're on an island as a business owner. And it's interesting. I have partners in my business, and yet we each have our responsibilities, and we communicate regularly, and yet the decision making for my responsibilities ultimately is mine, and they're not always accessible or available to run those decisions by. And my spouse is either too busy, uninterested, or I don't want to involve her in the stress and the decision making of something that she's not intimately familiar with. You find yourself in a position where you're on an island and you're isolated, and isolation leads to decision-making fatigue. It can lead to depression. Mental health is a major problem for business owners. I know this is something where wellness is trendy, and we also are not always very comfortable talking about mental wellness. But I can certainly say, with a doctor of psychology and a cognitive behavioral therapist as one of my partners, it is absolutely relevant today as a business owner to kind of keep up here, uh, top performing as much as possible, and that means addressing things like isolation. So that's number one, Andre. Number two, you already said it. We already referred to it. It's overwork. It's man, 10 to 12 hours, and that's probably not even healthy for us. And yet the 50% of business owners are doing over 60 hours. Nearly 30% are doing over 60 hours. It's just a lot of work for business owners. And what we find is a lot of business owners, as they grow, it's more and more input to drive more and more output, which is problematic. There's only so much capacity there to be able to do that. And if that's your method of growing, you're going to grind to a halt sooner or later. It's just inevitable. The third and last is blind spots. I like to say, a fish in water doesn't know that it's in water. You take it out of water, all of a sudden it has this epiphany. Wait a second, I don't know what's going on. This water was always around me. I never even knew it was there because it's what I know. The context, our experience, our past, all of that drives our decision making and how we view things. And so we find that most business owners, they're not troubled by what they know. They're not troubled by what they don't know. They're troubled by that whole big piece of the pie. What I don't know, I don't know. And so blind spots and understanding the perspective and the context that I'm looking at things through, that is the third universal challenge we find more often than not business owners have.
I didn't want to interrupt you, but so I'm going to go back to your points real quick. Yeah. So first thing is on an island. Even with my COO, and she's a partner, but and there's no secrets per se, but there are things where you just need to get like feedback from somebody else. Like you just need to like get someone from outside of that realm and looking, from the outside, because, sometimes the answer is right there, but because both of us have been in the business for 10 years and we're just in and out. And then like perfect example, the other day we got a call from somebody. They're like, why is your phone system so like complicated to like get someone on the line? And our answer was, well, it's always been like that, and a lot of times you'll see that in companies where it's just, that's the answer. Well, it's always been like that. That's what we inherited. And nobody's ever thought of that. So I think that's why it's important, as you had talked about, being on that island. And then the second thing is, especially, if you have with your spouse, there's sometimes, again, you always want to be transparent with your spouse, but there's sometimes if maybe the business is not doing good, maybe you're having some cash flow problems, you want to tell them, but at the same time, now that's going to bring worry to the household. So I know sometimes on my side, even recently where things were a little tough and I told my wife, but I didn't want to tell her too much because then, now she's biting her nails and it's just like a little more difficult and more tense. So I think, just going back to, like you said, that's a big struggle with business owners being in that island, because you just can't go to that employee and you just can't go to certain people because you tell them and then you get the wrong advice. Oh my gosh, that's the worst one. And you're getting advice from people that's never been there. So, and then going to the blind spots, that kind of just talked about with the phone system and just like, again, just as simple as that, where, now we have it so simple where you call, but before it's like it's like you're calling, one of these big telecom giants, and it's just beep, 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 beep. But nobody ever gave us the feedback until someone from the outside came in and like, figured that out for us.
That's great feedback to get. At least you got it, because some
Yes.
people never do.
Yeah, exactly. So we talked about some of the, common struggles that business owners face. So please tell me there's support out there for business owners. What have you seen? What are you doing as far as making helping these business owners, get out of that?
Good news, bad news. There's more resources today for business owners than ever before. The bad news is a lot of times business owners don't know what resources make the most sense for them. Andre, it's analysis by paralysis almost, or it's not even being able to take that first step because I don't know where to start. We recently published a white paper actually on this topic specifically. For business owners, there's a lot of routes for development, whether it's individual coaching, which has been shown to have tremendous results for people, whether it's the traditional mastermind, which you might know from Napoleon Hill, or it's the owner advisory boards, which we run today. There's a lot of different vehicles for owners to address these challenges. We find, and what we offer for owners is advisory boards, peer-to-peer advisory boards. The distinction between what we do and what you find with individual coaching or traditional masterminds is pretty simple. Everything we do is built around the right people, the right process, and the right structure. I think the number one ingredient when you're working with peer advisory, you highlighted this, meaningfully or not, it's no use to get advice from somebody who has not been through it or through something very similar and somebody who is not a peer. You need peers, and finding peers, believe it or not, is not easy. It is hard to find and cultivate peers. So our owner advisory boards are built with real exclusivity in mind and a really careful, intentional curation of business owners to provide a community of peers that can offer support and guidance and enhance decision making to address these challenges. And when you can do that with a diverse group of business owners and a diverse group of businesses that share similar complexity, similar challenges, similar opportunities, you create an environment where I can be vulnerable and I can talk about the cash flow. I can talk about some of this that I wouldn't talk about with an employee or my spouse. And I'm going to get feedback from people that I trust and, given a little bit of time, know me intimately enough that they can offer me advice that's going to work, because there's a lot of ways to do it. Doesn't mean there's a lot of ways to do it that I am willing to engage and execute on.
Man, you're dropping nuggets. I'm putting notes here, and again, I just don't want to interrupt you, but the key word that you put is right. All right, that's what I wrote while you were talking. The right group, because yes, I've been doing business for this one 14 years, Arxar cybersecurity, and in another business where I was vice president for 9 years. So I've been in the business world for a long time, and I've been in, like you said, those type of masterminds. But then it's just kind of like putting everybody together in a room, and then it's like nobody wants to show numbers, nobody wants to get naked in the room, because it's like, well, this guy's my competitor. Like, I'm not going to just or tell him like what's been working for me. And yeah. And I like what you said about that, that owner advisory board, because then sometimes you get people that are not necessarily even owners. Like, why am I in the room with this guy that's, yes, I want to help, but like, you're a solopreneur, and like, someone can always teach you something, but you level up, So I'm glad that you worded it that way, because I think that's a big differentiator. Owner advisory board. That's a key word and a big differentiator.
It's common for people to want to build out their own mastermind, Andre, or it's something that seems simple. But I heard a great saying from somebody that I know, like, and trust, that I love, and I use it all the time. The simplest things are often the hardest to do consistently. And so a mastermind is simple to build, but it's very challenging to build it in a way that's going to drive the results that you want to see if you're investing your time, energy, and money into it. We have a no compromise value system and approach in the work that we do. There's no compromise in the people we put together. There's no compromise in the results that we achieve for the people that we put together. And that's how we have a healthy, thriving, and growing business. The results drive from the fact that we're no compromise on how we build out our boards, the process, the structure, and the people involved with it. So it's a no compromise situation.
Yes, I love it. I love it. And I see some people are coming in afterwards. So just to do a quick recap of what we're talking about, we are live right now. It's Wednesday, 2:22 p.m. So please drop your questions. We're talking everything business related. If you're a business owner, which you're part of the Mighty Business Leaders Group, we're talking some good stuff here because scaling, I think, is probably the number. Getting new clients slash scaling is probably like the top two issues that business owners have. And sometimes you got to know when to get help. Sometimes you got to know uh, when you have to even let people go. I remember one time I was talking with someone and I was just consulting with them, and they realized like, wow, my sales guy wasn't a good fit, but I thought he was like a great person. And just sometimes you need to hear it from other people, even if you know it's there. And then accountability, right? Because as you talked about, Josh, when you have someone showing up and they're saying, okay, Andre, this is what you're going to be doing, right? Right? We all agree. Do you agree of this advice? Yep. Okay. So next time when we meet next month, we're expecting for this to happen. And then for that person to hold you accountable. Because even like for me, for example, I have my COO, I have my technicians, but if I didn't do something, they're not going to, although I welcome them to do it, but they still won't call me out on it. They're not going to treat me like the employee to say, hey, Andre, what's going on? Here's your write-up. They're not going to do that. They're just going to be like, okay, boss, we know you're busy, you're doing a lot of stuff. So when can you get it for us? So, and I think that's going to be a big differentiator, I would imagine, in these advisory boards when you have people where time is money and they're not just there to catch up with things and see how the family is. Like, hey, we're here for business and we're here to help each other. So I highly believe in what you're saying today.
I love accountability. We try to frame it in a way that people don't get as defensive over it. It's positive accountability. It's remembering what's driving it. What's the intention? What's the goal? What kind of impact do I want to leave? And having that structure in place is important. And it speaks to, Andre, part of what occurs in a mastermind or an owner advisory board really needs to be outside of the meeting itself. If we're getting together and the purpose is for you to share what your challenges are and to get feedback from me, and then vice versa, there's 29 or 30 other days in the month that we can have a process, support, and structure and offer positive accountability around to help us move forward from that to achieve whatever it is we want to achieve. And that having that structure and process, it's an essential for anything along these lines. You just have to have it.
Mm-hmm. So, one thing I didn't ask is how did the like, what was the need? How did the company ever, kind of like, how did this even get started? How are you so interested in this? Did you like, were you just like in a situation where you're like yourselves and then you're like, you know what, we just have to do it? How did the company come about?
That's multifaceted. I'll share the genesis of my story briefly,
Sure.
and then I'll offer some perspective more recently. I grew up with a father as a doctor. My dad's a solo practitioner. He's set to retire later this year up in Connecticut. We'll see if he does. He started his practice when my mom was pregnant with me. And so I grew up with a small business owner who was working 6 to 7 days a week when I was very young. And so I remember acutely the challenges that business owners face. And it has influenced me throughout my life in a number of ways, and in ways that I wasn't even aware of until I got older and I started to run my own business. And I started to see some of the creep and the stress of small business entering into my family and influencing my children and my relationships with my friends and family. So for me, what we do is very personal, being able to help business owners get better so that they can earn more, work less, enjoy it more, have that impact down the road that they want to have. That is a powerful thing personally for me. But my business partner, one of my two business partners, is a doctor of psychology, and we've just found that there's a huge gap for owners out there when it comes to mental wellness. We have a culture in this country which very much is all about the hustle, and it's how much can you martyr yourself for this bigger vision. And it's a really unhealthy way to go about it. And it's not to say that business doesn't take tremendous amount of effort and work and time to grow, but it also doesn't mean that we can't establish a balance that works for us to be able to have a healthy along with the business. But Andre and I had been intending to build out a mastermind and under advisory board for a number of years, as early as COVID. And I have my now joint venture partner, our third partner, John Zentgraf, who I started to turn to get advice from. And John's been running his own advisory boards for 12 years. John's a former private equity and investment banking owner. He also owned a manufacturing firm. He's been facilitating complex small business owners for many, many years. And he offered the idea of putting it all together. And I loved having a proven process, knowing that there's somebody that's really fleshed out what works and what doesn't work, so that we could come into the market and really start solving problems for business owners immediately. And the problems, by the way, those are apparent. You just start talking to a business owner, it's very thematic, right? It underlies everything a business owner talks about. This stuff is not shocking. It's all there.
Right. You dropped some nuggets there again. When you talked about your dad and that story, and I'm surprised even with that you decided to still have your own business, because I know, for example, my son, he's seen the struggles. He's 17 now, so he's seen the struggles of cash flow issues and like, hey, I want to do this but I can't, or we are somewhere, we're at a ball game, and now all of a sudden the client is calling and I got to step outside somewhere quiet to pick up. So, he's hesitant. I would love for him to, still go to college and come back and work in the business, but he's also seeing the toll it's taken on me. So I'm surprised for you that even though you saw what your father went through, that you still did that. There's also, yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, Andre, and I shared this with so many people. Business ownership has its share of risk. So does the corporate world, and it's different risk.
Mm-hmm.
But it would be really wrong to suggest that there isn't an equal amount of risk working for somebody else or a large corporation as there is in business ownership. It's just, what risk am I comfortable with? And that's what should determine what you're willing to do. I experienced the corporate risk. I firsthand saw some of the best people I know get laid off through no fault of their own and have a massive impact on their lives. I would rather take the bet on myself than go and run that corporate risk personally.
No, likewise. 20, I think I was 21 years old and I've never looked back.
Yeah, it's awesome.
So as we start to wrap up, if anybody has any questions, please go ahead and put it in the comments. We did put in the comments also Josh's information. This is his direct line, everybody. So when you are ready to reach out to him, we got to talk about what you do as well, Josh, as far as, the services that you offer. But, before we get there, what's one thing an owner can do today to accelerate the value in their business? So as I ask that question, I look at all of the nice books here I've read and trying to read. You got some Dave Ramsey stuff there. You got some Robert Kiyosaki things there. You have some Grant Cardone stuff, but I haven't read Josh Blum book about, what can I do today to accelerate the value in my business? And please answer this question for me. So I'm 41 years old. My goal is to hopefully be able to retire in my 60s. So what do I do now?
That's a loaded question, Andre. Say 60 is a long time away. It's really more about, what does retirement look like for me? And right there, you could really shape the answer to the question around that entirely. business owners are notoriously bad about putting all their time and attention and focus into the business today and not putting any of the time, attention, and focus into what that means for them later.
Mhm.
Nearly 100% of business owners will tell you their retirement is the sale of their business. And yet the vast majority never actually set their business up today, early on or from the beginning, to successfully be able to exit and sell it, nor do they actually put thought into and work with a team of professionals to figure out, what does my lifestyle planning look like? What do I need? Where am I today in my business? And what does it need to be at for me to get there? Because if I'm pouring all of my resources into it, that's what I need to do. 75% of owners, by the way, would sell right now today if they could get the cash that they wanted for their business to achieve their lifestyle. So 3 out of 4 of us would just, we're done.
Yeah.
If I could do what I want, if I could hit what I want at 60 today, I'm done. I'll sell my business. Those are the numbers. So the number one thing somebody can do to accelerate the growth and scale their business is to plan for their exit today. Really think about what it means and what I need my business to do. And if I haven't chosen to work with somebody, whomever that is, to start helping me with that process, I need to do that. And if I do that, Andre, very simply, I'll be able to identify, really with an audit of my business, where do I have gaps? What are those gaps for me in my business? What do I need to work on? Is it financial control? Is it key personnel? Is it policies and process? What is it? And now I can start building towards that. So it's going to be taken care of by the time I need it to be. That more than anything else will accelerate the process.
Okay, and I'm sure you wrapped up a lot of these books here, so thank you for that. First, I don't have to read 5 of them just to get that. So let me do a follow-up question on that, though. Is you mentioned about 70% of the business owners would sell now for the money that they want, but I'm curious to know, do you know roughly the statistic where when they do reach 60 and they're ready to retire? Because I remember reading the book called Built to Sell, if you've heard of that one. And it was a story about a guy, and he thought he was doing everything right in his business, and he went to a business broker, and the business broker laughed at him when he, for the money that he was asking for. He even said, you don't even have a business. You had a job all this time. So do you know roughly what you're seeing, and as far as when people are ready to sell, and that same scenario where it's like business broker says, I'm sorry, or maybe there's just no bites that they're getting for it.
So this is a really interesting question, because I've asked business brokers directly on this, and I'll have business brokers tell me, well, every business can sell. And yet somehow every study shows around 80% of businesses never sell. So
Wow.
I don't think that's the case. A lot of businesses will never sell. And it's because you said it right, or you were told right. It's not really a business. It's a high paying job.
Right.
And I go into business typically because I want freedom. And I end up oftentimes creating a high paying job because I don't do the work that needs to be done to actually get freedom from the business. Easiest way to ID that is, can I step away for 2 weeks without it screeching to a halt? And if the answer is no, I don't really have a business yet. Not yet. Not really. Not a business of value that I can sell. Exit Planning Institute did a study, a State of the Union, not too long ago. They had some really interesting statistics in there, but it's an echo chamber. Their study is all results and feedback from business owners that are involved with exit planning of some shape or form, or working with professionals in exit planning. And so I think the numbers are heavily skewed. Most businesses today are not prepared for sale and exit. And if you're not getting it done 3 to 5 years ahead of time, if you're able to sell, you're leaving a ton of money on the table.
Wow.
If you can sell.
Yeah. Yeah, if because then, like you said, like where what happens then? The kids don't want it because they've seen mom, dad just basically go miserable and go bald and not want to do anything with it. And then from there, their employees may not want it either, or not capable of, or you never even trained your employees to be able to, do your job. So it's very, very interesting. So Josh, as we start to wrap up, we've talked general questions, and that's typically what we do in the Miami Business Leaders. It's not a commercial. Josh didn't pay me to be on the show or anything like that. We're just giving out information. But now let's talk about what you do. If someone wanted to come, approach you and say, hey, everything you said, Josh, is things that I'm struggling with. what's that process look like as far as, what when they contact you, and also, what you can do for business owners?
Yeah, there's a lot that I'd like to think that we can offer to business owners, but the services we offer are relatively straightforward. We put together locally here in the Tri-County area in South Florida, uh, groups of up to 10 business owners at a time on a monthly basis, highly curated with a very specific process and structure around it and world-class support to help work through their challenges together and to provide them a forum where they can get really honest with each other and really vulnerable to provide better decision making, to reduce overwork, to eliminate blind spots and challenges, and address isolation. That's what we do in a nutshell. So we offer an opportunity for owners that have the right mindset and that are peers with other owners, a forum to be able to do this, and really with the goal of accelerating sales and growth, and putting themselves in a position that if and when they do exit, they do so in a way that's on their terms, because there's an exit coming for every business owner, Andre. It's just a question of, is it on your back? Is it on your 2 feet? And is it intentional or is it unintentional?
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. So, and I also want to kind of touch on that too, because I personally, I was in about 7 or so years ago. I was in, not because big difference between what you're saying and the typical word mastermind. So I want to kind of just touch that on that for our audience of how this is different, because I remember about 7 years ago when I was in a program, and it was just basically an older guy, seasoned guy. He was retired, and he was glorified babysitter to make sure that the structure was coming, but or the structure was staying the way it was. But I want to talk about that and make sure we hit on that, the differentiator between that business advisory board versus what you may see otherwise out there.
Yeah, there's a lot of misunderstanding around what a mastermind is, or an owner advisory board. Mastermind's easy to use because there's typically a foundation of knowledge there. Andre, most people have heard of mastermind, but mastermind can mean a ton of different things. It could mean any group of people. It might be a business owner, it might be a professional, it might be a vice president. It could be somebody from business development.
Mhm.
It's meant to provide accountability and a place for people to get together, to work through some of their challenges or to learn. Uh, what we do is we create a forum for people to provide feedback for each other. We are creating an advisory board, just like a major corporation would have an
Mm.
advisory board. We're helping facilitate the right people in a room that are peers. We also look to put people together that have different strengths. And so you might be fantastic at managing employees, but maybe a little weaker on financial controls. So you might want somebody in the room with you that's a lot stronger on financial controls, like a CPA, for example, or somebody from an M&A firm that can really help provide you feedback on that side of things. And then in addition to the people and the right people, the process, the structure around this, making sure that you have something in place that helps people achieve the results that they say they want to achieve. So for us, that means having robust intake, very robust intake. It means having clarity sessions twice a year with people individually. It's making sure that what's happening in a meeting on a monthly basis is being followed through inter-meeting. And then it's having world-class facilitation and support. We don't believe that any one person can provide you the right level of facilitation and support. That's why there's 3 of us. That's why we imbue and embed behavioral science into what we do. It's why we have somebody who has a PE background that's facilitating the meetings. It's why we have somebody like me that can help people work on executive presence, public speaking, and messaging, so that we can provide a forum of support that exceeds anything else out there. That is what an owner advisory board entails. It is intentional, it is by design, and its nature is very specific.
Boom, drop the mic. That's it. Josh, this has been really, really good. We know each other from a peer group, which is the power of networking, and we hope that everyone here has been able to, I've gotten a lot of nuggets, and at the beginning of the show, I talked about, Josh, you're going to be talking to me. There's a lot of stuff I know. I already knew that, you're going to be saying stuff that I need to do better on. So I really appreciate this. We do have a podcast as well, so I'm just going to say, oh, go ahead, Josh. You can just say your name, your phone number, your website, and I'm sorry I forgot the email, but just say that too, just in case anybody's listening, they can jot it down.
Yep, absolutely. So Josh Blum, 203-648-6060. The business name is Ivolve Thrive. That's Evolve, IVOLVE. And my email is jb@evolveandthrive.com. We have plenty of content out there as well, Andre. We've been running a podcast for nearly 3 years, the Get Fed podcast by JB and the Doctor, which is bite-sized business insight. And we've got a newsletter and a blog out there that's been running for nearly 3 years as well. So you're welcome to explore anything that we've talked about in the past, and hope to hear from y'all. But thank you for the time.
You're welcome.
Really appreciate it.
Of course. All right. Thank you, everyone. This has been another episode of the Miami Business Leaders. We do have another episode for you guys next week, and we're going to be talking about marketing. Do you know Carrie, Josh?
Carrie, in our group?
In Orlando. Yeah, in our group, yeah.
Yes, I do. Carrie's wonderful. Yeah. Carrie Flynn.
Yes, I have her. Yes. Flynn, thank you. Yeah, so she's going to be with us next week. So thank you again, and stay on the line, Josh. I want to just follow up with you.
Absolutely, Andre. Thank you.